seem like everyone's that's going to join, that's been able to, is signing in. Are we ready, Mike?
Yep, this mic is ready, and we're just waiting for you.
Well, the other mic's never quite ready, Mike Baskin.
This mic's ready too.
So thank you all for joining. My name is Dave Davenport. I am the founder, CEO of MotherG, also podcaster Midwest Mavericks, which is on the Drive in Chicago. I've been in technology my entire life and have run businesses for the last 20 odd years. So I've been challenged in keeping our business running through COVID-19, and I know I've used my peers and have a great deal of respect for the three gentlemen that are joining us. We're going to run through some leadership and culture concepts with Mike Baskin. Mike is the CEO of Baskin Consulting, and I'll talk a little bit more about Mike when he begins. Then we're going to move to operations, which is a key driver of any business and really critical in these times. Paul Schulls from Stuck Coaching is an expert in this area, and we'll hear Paul give us his top tips in keeping your operations running smoothly. And then last, certainly not least, we have Jody Williamson, who is an expert in business development, and we're going to hear from Jody on how to respond in tough times, which isn't markedly different than in good times, but certainly some nuances that I think are very important. And we're going to hear about Jody's ethical selling model, which I am a huge proponent of. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start. And first, we're going to hear from Mike Baskin. I've known Mike for a number of years now. He is the former co-president of Mark Schale, which any older businessman in Chicago is probably familiar with Mark Schale. He has also had a career with Inclusion Solutions, is a certified coach, and has worked with Lake Forest School of Management for a number of years, both as a consultant as well as an adjunct professor. And Mike, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and go ahead and tell us what matters in leadership today?
You said everything that matters about what I want to say about me. I do want to, I was thinking about the thing, and what I tried to do, putting all the resume stuff aside, what I try to do is to think through what makes effective team leadership, how to be an effective team leader, what makes one more effective, what adds to effectiveness. And I can tell you this, and then I want to move to the slides. I love learning, and each of these jobs has given me so many teachers, and I'm going to reference some of them when we're chatting now. I also want to be useful. So I'm hoping that this stuff that we go through in the next few slides, and you're going to see cool stuff from Jody and Paul too. They have fun stuff. This I hope you will find to be useful in what we're going through now. That's the goal. So may I go ahead and start with, there we are. So there's really three ideas I want to express, and I'm going to say them this way, and then we'll go through the slides. The first is, they're very simple. 1, tell me the truth. 2, tell me the story. And 3, give me the courage to act on that story. Those are the three ideas that I want to show and that I've been taught in effective leadership. And then I'm going to reference a story to try to make this as concrete as possible through my old place of employment, Inclusion Solutions. They have a wonderful story that I want to brag about. I had nothing to do with it, but I'm very proud of what they're doing. So first, tell me the truth. Tell me the truth is this slide, Define the Problem. A wonderful book from Max Dupree, who was at Herman Miller Furniture. The first job of a leader is to define reality. And the last job is to say thank you. The concept here is, and I'm going to use a coaching notion, if I may introduce it to you. Truth is the facts. Tell me what the facts are. Truth is independent of me. and of what I'm thinking or what my opinion is. Truth exists regardless. The reason for this, and the reason it's the first job in being effective as a leader, is the facts empower you. The facts are the means by which you can get stuff done. So an accurate understanding of the facts become the launching pad to get it to happen. So what I ask for from my leader is, please tell me the truth. Let's start with the way it is. Let's now go, now what do I do? Okay, once I have the truth. And the answer is, when we go to the next slide. This is a second concept in coaching that I learned. I thought it was really useful. If truth are the facts, independent of me, what's true is the meaning of the facts, the point. That's the story. Tell me the story. And tell me the story honestly, referencing what's true. The quote you're looking at is from a screenwriter. And let's go ahead, Dave, but there we go. And as you can see, the screenwriter is a big guy. You know, look at those films, Forrest Gump, Eric Brockovich, and so on, Aaron Brockovich. The point he's making is, if I can express what the facts mean in a manner that allows you to understand what to do and what we need to do, I will win you over and I will get you in the team. It's very important to accomplish this, and it's very important that the true be honest. That's the second comment. Self-knowledge is the root of all great storytelling, and honesty in this case means I have to believe what I'm telling you. It has to be true for me, because then I can make it true for you. I'm going to introduce, if I can now, I want to weave a story in to try to make this concrete. Inclusion Solutions, a place where I worked for a bit, their focus is on, it's a wonderful name of a company, is it? Inclusion Solutions. Their focus is to make the world accessible to people with disabilities. The founder of the company started this when he was 18 years old, when he was a fraternity member in Kansas. The idea of Inclusion Solutions, how do we make the world more accessible to people with disabilities, became the starting point of many, many things. What the story I'm going to introduce is one of their prime products, one of their major products is voting booths. Voting booths that are accessible to people with disabilities, and voting booths that are fine for people who are standing and unencumbered. I want to come back to this because here we are in an age of this virus and how that affected their business. So I just want to leave that out there. Voting booths is one of their main products. Okay, tell me the story. What does it mean? Let's go to the third thing. Give me the courage now to do something about it. The courage comes from the idea of resiliency. And for this, I want to thank where I work, also the Lake Forest Graduate School of Management at the Center for Leadership.
I mean, acknowledging that things are bad, but like, well, we'll just have to call the bank and, you know, the bank will solve everything.
Sorry?
More money. Yeah.
So the tell me the truth and tell me what's true is actually, it goes back to a comment I just heard. And is it okay to keep going?
I think that's somebody who's not muted their phone.
Okay, that was a good, that point is right though about the bank. So I'm going to keep going with that.
I mean, we're different than most people. We actually had a halfway decent March. Most people didn't.
Oh, I can hear somebody.
But I think our April's going to be like everybody else's March.
Is it?
Mike, can you mute who's ever talking, please?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who it is. Bear with me one quick second.
I see the name David Tarluck. Is that who it might be?
Tom, we'll talk to him as soon as we clear this 300 grand. We're just going to.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Hi. So, but that actually was a comment that I want to borrow from because it's how the world appears to us. So the way of giving a person the courage to act is to build resilience. And this will outlast anything we're going through now. There are 3 components to resiliency that I was taught at the Lake Forest Graduate School by a colleague, wonderful colleague, Erica Nelson. And it was written in a Harvard Business Review article. So I'm going to reference it now. There are 3 parts. First, see reality. That goes back to see the truth. But the point is to see reality in a way that is actionable. Resiliency means that I understand what's happening, but I focus on what I do and what I can do. Second, choose the meaning of what I'm seeing, which again goes to tell me the story. The meaning is what will get us through this to the place we need to go, the story we want to write and tell. Dave Davenport knows this from some work I've done with MotherG. There's a wonderful quote that goes to this from a philosopher, Nietzsche, and the quote is, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. If I know what this is about, if I know its meaning, I can do it. Number 3, continuously improvise. And for this, I'm going to borrow from an army doctrine, the Israeli army, in fact. And I'm going to read something to you because it's interesting. In the Israeli army, soldiers are divided into those who think with, I'm going to give you a little Hebrew, Rosh Gadol, which means big head. Big head in Hebrew, in English it means be self-centered, but in Hebrew it means to see the whole picture, the whole panorama, the whole range of possibilities. Israeli army doctrine is to search for officers who see the whole field, and then they improvise their solutions accordingly. That's what resiliency can come from. I see reality in a way that's actionable. I choose meaning that gives me purpose to my action, and then I improvise. Now, to go to the next slide, and as I do that, I want to observe 2 concepts, and this is an anchoring place. What's constant and what changes? What's constant is the purpose of my company, the purpose of our team. And I can reference that by talking about my company's origin story, and I won't go into this too far unless asked to, and the sacred center of what we're here for. What's the, as it says, the line around which we all hold each other. So let's put it together now in a story ourselves. Inclusion Solutions. The story of helping people with disabilities, the sacred center, make the world more accessible to people with disabilities. The environment, or the product, voting booths, the environment. How do I make it safe to vote in this environment for people? And how will it make it so that people will be comfortable voting? Facts, 25% of ballots in 2016 were mailed in. It's expected that that will double to 50% in 2020, given our situation. How do I make it possible for people to still feel comfortable, even with disabilities, to vote? Answer, I think this is brilliant. They improvise. The improvisation is a product they're calling the Precinct Infection Protection Kit. They invented all of this. I'll just read from the brochure very briefly. Poll workers are supplied with a personal hand sanitizer, mask, and protective gloves to make them safe. Voters, after marking ballots, return the pen and stylus to the poll worker, who has safety gloves and sanitizing wipes to clean the stylus and the screen. Voters who hand mark the ballots are given a sanitized pen. Voters are given a mask. Poll workers whose average age is over 65 are given a mask. You can see how this is all coming together. Tell me the story. Tell me that I'm safe so that I can exercise my responsibility as a citizen. The company has begun this process, and their sales, the impact on their sales has been a 50% increase from that one product, that one kit that they're making available for primaries in the United States. I thank you for your time, but I wanted to, that's the idea.
So Mike, if I can interject. So the point here, in your view, is that the leader role in all times, but notably in times of crisis like this, is to make sure that we're communicating the reality.
Yes.
But then also helping choose the meaning that provides purpose behind taking action. And then looking for the improvisation that allows us to pivot or to bring innovation forth that makes our business or our purpose come to life for the client. So in your case, the voting machine, I make voting machines. People are scared to vote. They don't want to go into a polling office because they're afraid of getting sick.
Yes.
Let's make them feel safe in coming to the polling office by giving a kit to that polling office that keeps everyone safe.
Yes. Perfect. Better said than I can say it. And it does all those things. Once again, it sees reality. It tells the purpose, the meaning of this story. What do we do now? And then it comes up with a whole set of solutions to make it possible to vote in this environment.
Yeah. So our leader has been able to evangelize vision, get everyone rallied up behind the idea, and then taking action to react to the crisis and try and be proactive in how you respond rather than just simply getting caught in the stream and carried down.
Yes. Yes.
Great. Thanks. And we'll offer up some Q&A to further explore that. But thanks, Mike. I think a great segue is the leader has created a sense of action now, and we've got an organization that's operating. Next, we have Paul Schulls, who is the founder of Stuck Business Strategies. Paul has a very successful career behind him and began this business to help organizations really thrive, and has also leadership but strong operational foundation. And Paul, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what you think an organization should do to remain unstuck or become unstuck in this time that people are going through with COVID?
Sure. Thank you very much, David. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. So real quick, it's about you guys, not about Stuck Coaching today, but Stuck Coaching helps clients create a very simple business plan, align staff to that plan and what their actions are, relentlessly execute to that plan, and therefore scale. So in essence, that's what we do. And I appreciate everybody taking your time to see us today. And for your time, I want to give you a couple quick things that you can do right after this webinar to make a difference. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. So first thing is communication with staff. So right now, rightly so, people are scared of what's going on and how long is this going to be like this, and am I going to get sick, and are my family members going to be okay, and all those things. There's fear in the workplace, and with fear in the workplace, that's what causes performance to decline a little bit. And as leaders, our key role during this time is to create to alleviate those fears. And so how do you do that? So focus them on what the plan is over the next 30, 60, 90 days, and what the individual's role in that plan is. And we want to really focus staff on, through times like this, opportunities arise. And if we can keep our minds focused on what the opportunities are based on what our customers are telling us, their pain points are, potentially we could get new revenue buckets stemming off of a situation like this. And it's not all on the leader's shoulders to come up with what that is. We can get staff all involved in those kinds of conversations. And if we can create momentum in our businesses around thinking about how we can use this difficult time as a means to grow through it versus contract because of it, we can alleviate some of those fears amongst our staff members because their time is spent talking about growth versus cost cutting and all those other bad things. So with that, we want to always have in front of staff a very simple plan. And if you don't have one, you can easily create one. It can be a plan for the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, year, whatever. I prefer between 30 and 60 and 90 days because things are changing so much that we have to be nimble and we have to be able to pivot our plans and our staff's actions accordingly as we win new jobs or jobs go away. So when you're creating that plan, think about 5 different categories or pillars to that plan. So number 1 is we want to think about what our revenue is going to be over the ensuing period here looking forward, and looking at our forecast, what's going to happen with that revenue, and not necessarily what cuts are we going to be making. I hear that term a lot versus can we right size our forecast to what our customers are going to need from us over the next 30, 60, 90 days. Next, we want to look at our customers and we want to focus on, number 1, how we're delighting them, but also what are they telling us insofar as their pain points, whether it be related to what we're doing with them or something we're not doing with them that maybe down the road we can do with them to generate extra revenue for the business. They're much more apt during times like this to talk about what their pain points are because that's what's first and foremost on their mind. By positioning ourselves as a solutions provider versus just the service or product we're providing them, we can really engender a better relationship with them, but also come up with those future revenue bucket ideas. That lends itself into innovation. In light of what our customers are telling us, what kinds of things can we start looking at, regardless of when it is, as to what we can provide additionally to our current clients or help us get new clients? Productivity. Right now, we have some people who may be less productive than usual, and we want to keep them employed, and we want to accelerate our growth and our profit coming through this time. And in order to do that, we can really start looking at what types of continuous improvements, key processes, other things that are related to the business and our value stream that we can smooth out and make more efficient while we've got the time to do it. Because once the faucet turns back on, we're not going to have time to be doing that sort of thing. And if we can be working on that now, we can be focusing our staff on continuous improvement versus being scared of what might happen. If we can work at our processes now, better define them, work the waste out of them, we maybe can grab a couple more points coming out of this than we otherwise would be able to. So by prioritizing the key continuous improvement activities, assigning staff to those, and watching that they're hitting their must-do, can't-miss items or related to those is really a great use of time right now. Lastly is great place to work. What I'm seeing a little bit is some of those key great place to work activities related to the business are falling by the wayside, whether it be related to social distancing or whatever else. Our attention's being focused in other places to just sustaining the business. It's important to keep those going, even if we need to do them virtually, and just to keep the staff engaged. So when you look at those 5 columns or pillars or categories of a business, picking a few key things that you want to work on along those 5 lines, and then ways of measuring each one of those activities, you've spent a couple minutes putting together a very simple business plan that can get you through these hard times and help accelerate your growth coming out of this, which is what I want for you. Having a visual means of staff being able to list who's doing what by when relating to your plan, that's the accountability piece. So I hear some owners saying, I don't know what my staff's doing. I can't keep track of everything that they're doing. They're all at home and I don't know what's going on. It's really difficult. Makes sense to me. But establishing some sort of means of those people listing what they're working on, how far along they are, and when they expect it to be done, not only to help the leader in keeping track of who's doing what, but those staff being able to look at each other's, because when they're working in the same facility, it kind of happens both of them being together in meetings or whatnot, but also kind of happens osmotically. So developing a means for people working both on-site and off-site to know where everybody's at related to the plan you just developed. That's the accountability piece, and that's how you execute to that plan. On a monthly basis, take a breath of fresh air, take an hour out, get your group together, and look at the status of that plan that you've created and how you're tracking to it. That's where you pay attention to those targets that you've set, which measure the status of your key initiatives that you picked for each one of those 5 columns that are listed on step 2. And then lastly, we don't want to go back and redo our budget because our budget was done a long time ago. If we're further into the year, we want to keep an eye out on our forecast and keep that forecast, your revenues and the percentage of revenues that each of those expense key line items are, and make sure that you're tracking along to keep your bottom line as healthy as you can. But by looking at that regularly, it helps, number one, keep staff engaged to the conversation of who's doing what by when, and also what new revenue buckets can become of these hard times. And you've got a real-time figure of what those numbers look like.
So
that is what I have for you today.
That's a good question. You know, I think a lot of organizations would say they're buried, they're busy. I don't have time to come up with a plan. I'm too busy fighting fires. How do you respond to that?
It's a really good question. And what I would say is when you're working within and fighting fires, that's very important. And what the best thing to do in a situation like that is to prioritize those fires, but also try to take some time to come up with working on the business, albeit times like this, there's not as much time to do it. I understand that. But unless you have a plan that acts as your compass, it's very hard to navigate through times like this. And looking at what are some of the key items or systemic issues related to these fires that you have, if we can work on those even a little bit now, when we get busier once we come out of these times, we'll be much better off for it.
Yeah. All right, great. Thanks, Paul. I think this, by the way, this is some contact information for Paul, and we'll share this presentation with everyone so you can gain access. I think that leads us, though, into one of the most important areas that I think concerning people that I'm talking to, which is my revenues are declining. Are we going to be okay? How do we keep the business operational? And some people would say nothing happens until a salesman closes the deal. And for that conversation, we have Jody Williamson, author and extraordinary coach on business development. We use at MotherG. I'd like Jody, can you briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what we can do in this troubling time?
Yeah, so I started the Sandler business 23 years ago, a little over 23 years ago, and just the perspective I'm bringing to this conversation is that's my lane is sales and sales management. What Mike and Paul are talking about, I know enough to be dangerous in. They're the experts, but my sweet spot is in that sales area. And I'll also come from the perspective as I manage salespeople and I sell. So I'm not talking about some ivory tower concepts that we don't use. And I make sales calls myself, and I've had a number of new appointments in the last month virtually. So we're doing all the pivoting with our clients too. But yeah, you took the first slide I had, Dave. Nothing happens till someone sells something. So we had this Escaping Void, a company we work with, created some images for our office that's empty now, and but it looks really cool in an empty office. And we have the electronic version. So this is kind of our main kind of message when people come in, and it really is driving businesses. And the ones I'm coaching now and the ones I'm talking to are very much like you said. They're like, okay, what do we do with revenue? What does sales look like now? And I know there's a variety of kinds of businesses on the call today. And we work with people anywhere from, individuals who come to us up to, global companies that have sales forces all over the world. But, when people start with us, they all say, well, our industry is different, or our business is different. I've heard about Sandler. It's been around a long time, but ours is different. And And I've never had anyone not tell me it's different. But what I do know is that selling, getting to the right decision maker, getting people to make decisions, prospecting for new business, overcoming price objections, selling value. I mean, that pretty much transcends industries. And so we're seeing the same thing now, is that we work in a lot of different industries. We don't specialize in one. But my observation over the last month and spending time with more salespeople than I can count in all these different groups I've been a part of, I've really been listening. They're all going through a version of the same thing in their own space. And for business owners, it's a similar piece in that, okay, how do we need to pivot? What does that look like? What does virtual selling look like versus face-to-face? And then when we're using virtual, what do we, how do we best make that work? But before we even get into that part, we always take the step back and say, because a lot of people are shutting down, because there's a couple buckets, we'll call them, that people are in. One is that, okay, hunker down, put our head down, really don't do anything, cut all the expenses, just wait for this to pass. And then there's others that are like, okay, this is a really good opportunity. This, it's not fun, but like, how can we use this to make ourselves stronger in the future? Specifically with the sales department, in my conversations, how can we be better when we come out of this? And how can we adapt to now, whether this is for another 30 days or 6 months? And then what does the new reality look like going forward when it comes to selling? Because I don't think it'll ever go back 100% to what it was. Just with the virtual aspect, we're seeing the benefits that sales teams are having. So something we talked about in the podcast you had me as a guest on recently, Dave, was the ethical selling model. And I know that you wanted me to share that today. And there's 2 parts to it. And the first part is on the screen now, which is it's unethical to sell someone something they don't need. And so when I share that with people, they're all like, yeah, because there's an exercise I do with groups. In fact, I did it yesterday. I asked a group we had 60 people or so on a call. I said, in the chat box, put all the words that describe the stereotypical salesperson. Okay, and words like slimy, sleazy, obnoxious, fast talking, high pressure, that all comes up. And I've asked the question for 23 years. It's always the same words. My book, The Contrarian Salesperson, it's a parable, and I include that list in the story as part of the story. So because there are salespeople out there to make a quick commission and to make the sale, and in this environment you hear of all these scams that people are all of a sudden just selling people stuff, and it's awful. But rule number 1 here is the one that the stereotypical salespeople do. So when I say this, it's unethical to sell someone something they don't need. 100 people in a room, I say, how many believe this? 100 hands go up, and they should. I say, but let's look at the second one. And so the second part of the rule is it's unethical to not sell someone something that they do need. And this is the messaging I've had for teams in the last month, is that I granted there are certain businesses you called on in the past that they are truly hurting, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have a conversation with you now. But there are another tier of people out there that is the perfect time to talk to them. That might be prospects, they might be existing customers or clients, they might be other decision makers in current customers and clients who we never talked to before because it wasn't appropriate based on just we didn't need to, but now it's a whole different conversation. And so one of the things I'm conveying to people I like to pass along today is if you have a sales team or you sell yourself, it's like there are people out there that need you. And many times salespeople are letting this stuff get in their heads so they're paralyzed and they don't even pick up the phone. They don't even make the attempt on LinkedIn. They don't network or ask for referrals. They're not getting to people because they're getting caught up in the negativity trap. And I'm not minimizing or trivializing how bad things are, but I do have noticed that, I have another saying, play the cards you're dealt, not the ones you wish you were dealt, okay? These are the cards you're dealt. Are you just gonna fold up the tent, or are you gonna figure out how to make this work? Because I really believe we're in the storm before the calm. And so we're in this storm right now. The calm is coming, and the calm is more normality, even though it'll never be the same normal. What are we doing to get ready for that? So I'd encourage everyone on this call, if you have a sales team, to really go through and what is our core? What is the value we're providing? What does that really look like? And who should we be talking to? Because I do believe there are people out there that everyone on this call today has in their kind of space where it would be unethical to not reach out to them. It would be unethical to not at least make the attempt. If they shut you down, fine. I could sleep at night knowing they shut me down. But I can't sleep at night knowing that there's someone out there I can help. I didn't even pick up the phone. because I didn't want to make a cold call because that's a little weird today. No, it's not. Not if you believe it. If you have magic dust, if you had a magic cure for some crazy thing that's going on like we have now, you'd make all the cold calls in the world if you could make the calls. So it's about belief and conviction. And so that's one of the key things I wanted to mention. And so think about that with teams. And really, and the next slide, Dave, is really ties into this. Is, you know, our goal is to be creating massive amounts of value. And if we can create value through having these conversations, even if they say no, depending on the kind of conversation we're encouraging is one where we get them to engage. And I heard the term pain points earlier. I think, Paul, you mentioned it. Is that, you know, people have pain points they do want to talk about, and they're different than they were 3 months ago. And salespeople, in our model anyway, should be listening more than talking. 70% of the time they should be listening, 30% talking, which is about the opposite of many salespeople. So we're having authentic conversations to people that we can truly help. And that's ultimately what sales should be. It shouldn't be selling someone something they don't need. It should be having a conversation to figure out if we can help them. And we're the doctor, and we figure out they got a disease. We got a prescription. We can help them now. But we can't prescribe before we know what their issues are. So those are the big ones. And then the last thing, just real quick for those on the call today, I want you to think about this. And this is a thinking process and a planning process I developed many years ago, the constant sales improvement process. And you could apply this to different parts of companies, but specifically with sales, I just want you to ask yourself these 4 areas, okay? Number 1 is, how are your strategies now changing? Right? We are finding, for example, in many sales organizations, they are targeting they've decided to strategize by targeting different verticals. I have a list right here on the wall from a client we worked on last week. And we have 7, 8, 9 vertical markets they never would have called on 60 days ago. And today they reported back on our weekly call, and they had new opportunities they had created just by thinking, who should we be calling we can create value on? We never would have done that before. So think of your strategies. Are there different verticals, or is there more prospecting, or is it more expanding existing accounts and creating value? Structure. Right now where we're at, how does your sales management structure need to change? Do you need to have more accountability, more coaching? Is the coaching tactical or mindset? Because I'm telling sales managers now, manage mindsets, not numbers. The numbers will come, but you got to manage mindsets because everyone's heads are sideways. And so think about how sales management structure needs to change. Do you need to change the process of coaching and pre-call strategy and post-call debriefing and all that stuff we'd recommend at any time? Staff, I'd ask yourself, do the people that got you here the ones that are going to get you to the promised land? Are they the ones that are going to get you to the next step? Because I know that many salespeople who were pretty good at selling in a decent economy were really not salespeople. They were glorified order takers. They were high-paid clerks. And now it's going to get tough. We're going to have a settling process, just like we did in 2008. We saw it at 9/11. We've seen it, and I've seen it in my past, is that there's a number of salespeople on teams that aren't going to be around in 60 days because we're going to realize they're order takers, and they're very high-priced order takers. And we can find people out there. And the other thing I'd recommend to this group is in the next 60 days, you're also going to see sales talent at a higher level than you've ever seen before, because some companies are getting rid of really good people. Now, many companies are getting rid of the boneheads you don't want to talk to, but there are people losing their jobs who are really good in sales by no fault of their own. And they're going to be on the market really soon. In fact, it's not even 60 days. I'm hearing about it now. So ask yourself, is your sales team the right team? And then skills. I just ask yourself the question, do we have the skills right now and in the future around how to better prospect, how to get to decision makers, how to engage people? I mean, it's what skills do we need? And then all the virtual stuff we could talk about, but what skills do we need now? And for all of our conversations, we're having 2 questions, 2 things. What does it look like today? And then when things change, what does it look like in the future? So we have 2 different realities we're dealing with. And yeah, so it all comes down to being proactive, not reactive.
Yeah. And Jody, can you talk about just a second, because I want to get to the Q&A session, but just a second, you kind of mentioned what we call head trash, right? The head trash of salespeople thinking, I shouldn't be calling right now. People are really busy with their own problems, and I'm just a salesman calling, trying to sell them something.
Yeah, that's a big issue, and testament to that, we were talking before we started today. I did a public webinar. We just put it on Zoom and just opened it up on LinkedIn to people. And it was titled Ethical Prospecting in Challenging Times. And we had 177 people sign up in our little ecosystem, right, in like 2.5 days. And so there's the question people are asking, and we addressed in there, and it just is exactly that. Like, how do I prospect now? And the head trash is, it's too sensitive of a time. People don't want to talk to a salesperson. They don't want to have a conversation. It's just too weird. And I think the first couple of weeks that there might have been an argument for that. But right now, there are people, and it all comes back to the ethical selling model, Dave. It's basically, if I truly believe I have something I can help someone with, and they need my stuff, I owe it to them to pick up the phone. And the head trash is, if people don't believe it, it's like, wow, let's just wait for this to settle. It feels a little weird making a cold call prospecting, and I don't want to be too pushy. And okay, guess what? Your competition's making that call if they're providing value.
Okay, I just want to wrap up for a second and kind of pull it all together. We started with the idea of leadership, and that's really the role is to build awareness, to tell the truth, but then to take that truth and talk about what the reality is to the organization, falling back on what the core purpose of that organization is and how it brings value, and then build that into innovation that we can then take forward. Then we've got an idea, how do we execute that? And Paul talked to us about putting together a plan, engaging the communication with the team, having something that we can measure and track and roll that out into execution, and then ultimately sell it. In how do we sell it, who do we sell it, and why we should still be calling even in times where people could be troubled and whatnot. And I think the one thing that we saw was with Inclusion Solutions, how the leadership brought that forward, saying, hey, we sell voting booths and people are scared to go to voting booths right now because of Corona. What can we do? And we got this idea of this sanitary kit that we can send to a polling station. And then how do we put that together? I'm sure there was a plan in which we said, well, how would we put this together? How are we going to manufacture it, so to say? How are we going to get it out to the marketplace? How many are we going to need? The forecasting, that required some plan and execution. And then ultimately, a salesman had to pick up the phone and call the clients, call the various polling organizations or voting organizations and say, hey, we have this solution, and we'd like to talk to you about it. And if you think about it, it's really, that ethical model really comes to bear here, because it's such a critical solution to a very critical process to democracies around the world, really, but certainly to the United States at a very challenging time. That's a solution where you have to call because they need this solution. And if they said, well, we don't want to call them because they're under crisis, they would be struggling with trying to find a solution to getting people into those polling booths. And yet Inclusion Solutions comes up with this and now is going gangbusters with this new product innovation, which is good for them, but it's also good for the polling organizations. Right. It solves a problem for them, and they're willing to pay to solve that problem. So I think those are a good way of bringing all of the whole point of this discussion together. So I want to start and ask some questions of all of you as we go through that. And Mike, can you gather any questions that are coming up through chat as well? But first, to Mike. Mike, how does leadership impact culture? I mean, culture is tough when you're all working from home. Should leadership really be focused on culture, or does it really matter? Are we putting it on pause for the time being?
It's interesting. I'm going to read a question that Mike Vizo sent us from someone. It said, I miss seeing people and really enjoy when the staff and seeing them interact with each other. That's the perfect example of culture, isn't it? And the answer I understand to be, culture is something that, for example, at MotherG is a very intentional process, but its purpose is to provide solid ground. It's the ground against which we push. So I think now is the time to leverage culture in this environment because it's where I can stand solid. You know, it's the firm ground. And then that shows me, to go back to what we were talking about, a sacred center and to know what the constant is so that I can adapt from that culture as Inclusion Solutions did. Or as I was thinking about when Jody was talking, I mean, sales is problem solving as I understand it. No problems get solved without sales. So it allows me to do that. So my short answer is you use the culture that you built, leverage it as the solid ground, and adapt with it.
Okay. Hey, Paul, I was really intrigued when you talk about bringing focus to the client's challenges and focus on innovations to solve those challenges. How do you get people to take action when they're so busy? How do you get them to bring this together?
Well, I think when we're speaking of culture and we're reinforcing this culture of growth and being customer focused, if we create as leaders the venue by which our staff can voice the ideas that they're getting from their customers as far as pain points, and collectively we can select one or two, maybe that is something we can start to pursue, you begin to reinforce this culture of growth. I think that both Mike and Jody spoke about, which was, we can make the choice to kind of hunker down, or we can make a choice to be the heroes to our customers and accelerate through this. And what are the ideas that our customers are giving us? Can we look at those collectively, and can we start selling other solutions than we already do? And, that doesn't necessarily have to be incumbent upon difficult times. This is a great time where staff are really going to focus on that if we create that culture, but then coming out of this, we can really accelerate that culture and accelerate that process to really scale those businesses.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And Jody, where do you think the salespeople need to really focus their energy? I think it's hard to say, necessarily find innovation, but how do you go about getting started? If you're kind of got that head trash, how do you get over that?
Yeah, we have a saying that it's not how you feel that determines how you act, it's how you act that determines how you feel. And many times the best way to get out of a funk is just do a lot of behavior. We know that people who do the right behaviors in sales will behave themselves out of this crisis. We recommend something called a cookbook, which is basically the recipe for success, which says things like, okay, how many attempts am I going to make today? Cold calling. How many LinkedIn messages am I going to send out? How many referrals am I going to ask for? How many people are going to reach out to? So the first step would be to come up with the behavioral plan. The second step is to have those value creating conversations. Because if I truly start with ethical selling, is that I owe it to people to get in front of them. It's not hard to make the call. The call reluctance, the fear of rejection goes away if I truly know I have some magic dust that people need. And then part of it is also just really expanding the thinking. The company I referenced before where the sheet is on the wall over here, they had never thought of these industries to call on. And all of a sudden it's like, wow. We did it like in a 20-minute call a week ago, and they reported back today, as I said, and it's amazing what the progress they made. And these industries were there all along. They just didn't think of it. They weren't forced to think of it. So I'd say salespeople also need to think of not only different verticals to call, different decision makers to call, go back and talk to those accounts. Like if you were up in a competitive bid situation and you lost the business to a competitor, everything's changed. Go back to those people that you lost the business to before and have a conversation with them again, especially if you know the competition of yours that got the business is vulnerable now. Maybe they don't have the size of business to support this thing. Maybe they don't have the specialty to support things. So there's no shortage of opportunity for salespeople. This is a really good time. Like anytime I say good time now, it feels weird. So I'm not trivializing anything or minimizing it, but it is a really good time to be in sales. And not only that, with this time in history where we have LinkedIn, we have Zoom, we have all these technologies where it was way harder when you had the Illinois Manufacturers Directory and a rotary phone. When I started out, not to do the old war stories, but I started with a phone book and that was it, right? Remember that red book, that Illinois Manufacturers Directory? I started out with that damn thing, and it's a way better world to live in right now when we're going through this with everything we have at our fingertips. And that's another thing. It's awful, but this is a really good opportunity. Take advantage of it.
I think it is, as long as you really believe that you're bringing value to your clients. And I think that's the head trash that some salespeople, those nasty salespeople that are called sleazy and everything else, are the people that don't feel that they bring value to the clients. That the only reason they're trying to get that sale is for the commission check.
Yeah, no. Another one of my graphics I had created is you have to sell yourself on your stuff before you sell others on your stuff. And for those on the call, small business owners with salespeople, I find a lot of business owners are sold, but their salespeople aren't. So they're all on board. Like, hey, we got all this value we can create, and it hasn't rolled downhill yet. And they're sitting there like, okay, yeah. And they're like, then they get on the water cooler, or they're on Teams later in a secret chat, like, oh, can you believe this bullshit, right? So it's like, no. We got to make sure our people are sold too, because we can't assume that they're as sold as we are, because rarely are they.
So we have a question from Bob of General Plastics, and he says, when will we see pushback from companies and their employees over the government dictatorship? I'm getting concerned as the light at the end of the tunnel has just got a whole lot dimmer for most of us. And he's from Wisconsin, who their governor announced that they're reopening the day after Memorial Day, at least not until then. And I think Governor Pritzker is probably going to do the same thing if we believe the rhetoric that's coming out right now. How do you guys feel about that? And what do you think, what is your sense in talking to your clients about how business is reacting under this shutdown? Paul, maybe you can comment from a Wisconsin perspective, since Bob is from Wisconsin.
Sure. It's a really good question. And I think, to what both Mike and Jody have been talking about, it comes down to, and not at all to trivialize it, it comes down to a choice as to how you want to react to what's going on. So the folks that I've been working with are choosing to accelerate and looking for other opportunities and capitalizing on those, and then exponentially growing following this. So, and that's easy to say, harder to do, but you start, you pick a day and you start on that day and you constantly get better at it as you go.
Yeah. Jody, Mike?
I'll just add something. Isn't it true in general for us that everything we're talking about is easier to say and harder to do?
Yeah.
Business is always about execution in the end.
Yeah, I have a little sign that I keep above my computer. It's on a Post-it, and it's ATANA. And most people, I call it a TANA. What does that mean? And they come in and they see just this handwritten little Post-it, and it stands for all talk and no action. And it's a reminder to me that nothing really happens until we take action. We can talk as much as we want. We can lament about the problems we have. We can say this is ridiculous, or we can just do something about it. And I think Jody's comment about, you play the cards you're dealt, not the ones that you wish you had. And I used to watch Texas Hold'em, and the interesting thing is the guys that win a lot of money are not the guys with the best cards. They're the ones who play the cards that they're dealt the best. Maybe they fold in some cases, but a lot of times they're winning with cards that most people think, oh, those aren't that good. And I think that's the time that you find innovation. And we can just get stuck sometimes in our own head thinking, woe is me, boy, this is a really bad set of cards I was dealt. But man, if we're focused on how we can bring that value forward, it can really be powerful.
Yeah.
We're about, there's the noon hour, top of the hour. We have just one last question that I'll field, and then if there's anything anybody else has, please ask. But John from TransTech asks, how are you engaging your teams? Do you have any recommendations? And I think that spans all three of you. how are you engaging your teams, and how do you have any recommendations? And I know that's particularly challenging in a work from home model where you can't just walk out and rally the troops around the coffee table the coffee urn, so to say.
I have a comment on that, if I may.
Yeah.
How do you engage your teams? And the second part was,
Do you have any recommendations?
do you have any recommendations? I understand engagement to mean that your team is involved with, cares about, and wants certain things to happen, is all in. And how one does that, in this environment where we can't see each other face to face, as one of the commenters commented on, not being together as a staff. I think the answer there is to go back, if I could, to that idea. What's reality? Define it. And then what's the meaning of what's going on? And the meaning of what's going on right now with the team is we can't be together because these are the facts. However, we must be together to get this done. How are we going to do it? Let's do it. And the most important way to do that, or the best way, at least I've learned, is to tell me the story that makes me important to the story and a hero in the story.
Yes.
You, team member, are a hero in this story.
Right.
And I would just say, I would add just with sales teams, I've been doing weekly meetings with many of the companies I work with, and they're actually seeing each other more than they typically would in these weekly meetings, because they're just a bunch of lone rangers running around, out there selling, and they're all geographically many times not in the same location. And I would recommend that with us from the sales piece, that there's a weekly best practice, what's working, what's not working, what are the verticals we're targeting, because we're seeing a lot of quick growth on the way people are using technology for joint sales calls by bringing a technical person on the call with them as an example, or getting to different people. It's that mastermind concept on a weekly basis with a sales team to address this question specifically for sales. And we are seeing people their capabilities have 10x'd in many areas in the last month, but partially because they're sharing ideas and they're just exponentially growing that way.
Yeah. And I can share a little bit with my team. We're all working remote. We're an essential business. We keep people's IT running, and that's pretty important in these times. But it's a lot different than managing a team when everyone's in their own home. You got 35 people spread out really around the world, and you're trying to coordinate those activities and make sure everyone's pulling the rope in the same direction. With those innovation, those new things that we have to focus on, new services that we have to offer to provide the capabilities that our clients need in their quest to continue working under shelter at home. And one of the things is regular check-ins. So it's one thing when you can walk around the office and check in casually. This needs to be a little more deliberate. But what I've been doing is just reaching out to my team members through Teams, which is one of the tools we use. And instead of calling them, doing a quick video chat. And it's come to the point now where we don't even call each other anymore. We just pop open a Teams screen, and now we're face to face doing a quick check-in. And I'm doing that, with Mike, who's my marketing director and running this webinar for us. I'm doing that multiple times a day with my business development team. I'm checking in with them multiple times a day. With clients, we're doing quick check-ins multiple times. I've got my technical account managers that are running their proactive maintenance out with clients, checking in face-to-face regularly. And so I'd encourage everyone to regularly, proactively, deliberately check in with everybody on their team and make sure that everyone feels engaged and part of what they feel that organization is, so that they're engaged, you're communicating with them, and you're sharing the truth and the purpose of the story of the organization over and over. So I'll bring us to the conclusion here. Thank you all for joining. The slides are available for you. If you're looking for them, please reach out to Mike. Mike, I'm not sure how you'll share those, Here's contact information for our folks that have just spoken. Mike, anything you want to share before we close out?
Yeah, we will have this information up on YouTube so you can watch the full video and audio by the end of the week. We're also going to have a survey, so if you'd be kind enough to fill that out and give us your feedback, and feel free to share this with as many people as you'd like.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's been our pleasure, and hang tight. We've got, I think we're at hump week. I think we determined this is hump week of the shelter at home. If we go back to work by June 1, we'll have 6 weeks left, and we just completed 6 weeks in. So I hope that's good news to you and not bad news. So thank you all, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks.